Cambodia is celebrating a new election of leader Hun Sen from the Cambodian People's Party, but the United States is saying not so fast. The United States says it will announce punitive measures because it does not consider this to have been a free and fair election. They claim that the opposition was threatened and harassed. So, joining me to discuss this is Carl Zha. He's an expert on Asian politics and host of the Silk and Steel podcast. Thank you so much for joining me about this.
Thank you, Natalie, always.
So, my question is why is the United States declaring right away that this was a bogus election? What do they know about it? And what is the motivation for this?
This reminds me of that mean image cartoon says the myth of consent. Like, you have the Cambodian people say, I consent, I consent. And the United States State Department, like, are you forgetting about somebody else? And, why is it any US business? What happens in Cambodia? But it has always been US business, what happened in Cambodia. They were deeply involved back during the Vietnam War. U.S. supported the Cambodian dictator Long Law, and that led to basically expansion of the war out of Vietnam and into countries like Laos and Cambodia. And in fact, the bombing of Laos was so intense that people know about the bombing of Laos. Laos was the most bombed country. 2 million bombs were dropped, more than what U.S. dropped over on Germany and Japan during World War II. But very few people know that U.S. also bombed Cambodia. It was so heavily bombed that it radicalized the country and enabled the rise of Khmer Rouge. So back in 1975, when basically North Vietnamese army came in and they kicked out the U.S.-backed dictator Nang Lo and propped up Khmer Rouge in power. And Hun Sen was one of the cadre among the Khmer Rouge movement. But around 1977, 1978, the Khmer Rouge leadership had to have a fight with the Vietnamese leadership because of nationalism. And then when the war broke out between Vietnam and Cambodia, Khmer Rouge started a massive scale purge among its own party ranks in Cambodian society. And Hun Sen found himself at the other end of the purge. So he escaped Cambodia, he defected to Vietnam, and he came back with the Vietnamese army when Vietnam launched the invasion of Cambodia in 1970. And so he was propped up as the head of the new Cambodian government by Vietnam. And I remember I lived in China in 1980. So when I was an elementary school student, when I walk home, there will be like the speakers broadcasting news. At that time, China and U.S. were on the same camp. They were supporting Khmer Rouge against Vietnam and Soviet Union. So I would hear the news about like how the Khmer Rouge guerrilla ambushed another convoy of the Vietnamese soldiers and the puppet troops of the government of Hun Sen, right? Remember, okay, Hun Sen, that guy. And after toward the end of the Cold War in 1989, one of the conditions Chinese leadership Deng Xiaoping had for normalizing Sino-Soviet tie was Vietnamese withdrew from Cambodia and Soviet withdrew the 1 million man Red Army from the Chinese border. And that happened in 1989. And actually visited Deng Xiaoping in Beijing in 1989. So after the Vietnamese withdrawal from Cambodia, there was a Paris peace talk in 1991, and the Khmer Rouge decided to boycott the peace process, very foolish move. And then what happened was during the transition, there was the Royalist Party backed by one of the Cambodian prince who is receiving support with United States, decide entering a power sharing arrangement with Hun Sen's government, which previously was backed by Vietnam. And that lasted for a few years until 1997 when Hun Sen ousted this other party, the Royalist Party, and he became the sole premier of the entire country. So from that point onward, U.S. basically has been funneling opposition parties funneling funds into
Mm,
opposition parties into Cambodia, trying to do regime change. And in response to that, Hun Sen got closer to China. And this is actually shows the pragmatism of Chinese diplomacy. They used to be enemies. Hun Sen,
yes.
used to be on the other side of the camp, but now they Cambodia, starting from 90s till now, is one of the China's closest, one of the country closest to China diplomatically in Southeast Asia. And China has provided Cambodia with with a lot of financial assistance, investment, and during the Syrian civil war, around 2013, 2014. At that time, United States and its allies were funneling a lot of jihadists to Syria to fight Assad. And one of the channel was they're directing these radicalized Uyghurs who are fleeing China through Southeast Asia. One of the route was they go through the China's southwestern province of Yunnan and go into Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, and then they arrive at Malaysia, where they will receive Turkish passport from the Turkish consulate in Kuala Lumpur, and then they will fly to Turkey, where they will be greeted at the airport by the jihadist recruiters who sent them directly to Syria. And this is how like thousands of Uyghur fighters ended up in Syria. Now in
What?
2014,
This is crazy. I didn't know
yes,
this. Okay. All right.
yeah,
That's
yeah. This
shocking.
is one of the less covered stories, and that actually led to the 2015 Bangkok bombing, because Thailand, Vietnam, and Cambodia authorities were cracking down on this network. They arrested a lot of the Uyghurs who were illegally entering their country, and Vietnam and Cambodia were immediately repatriating these Uyghurs back into China, and they face a lot of diplomatic pressure from U.S. For doing so. U.S. actually publicly threatened the government of Cambodia. They say, look, if you keep doing this, we're gonna cut off all aids, we're gonna cut off all fundings, we're gonna sanction you, blah blah blah. But Hun Sen ignored them, and because he already have Chinese fundings coming through, and but Thailand did a they did a Solomon's justice. They say, okay, all the Uyghur men go back to China, Uyghur women and children they go to Turkey, and but that was not good enough for some of these Uyghurs. So Uyghur separatists in Bangkok, they blew up a shrine in 2015, in August 2015. This was a big story back then, and when the police raided his place, they found stacks of fake, quote unquote, fake Turkish passports. And so, initially he claimed to be a Turkish citizen until, later he's actually turned out to be one of the Uyghurs uh, getting out of China. And and so Cambodia has always sided with China, and for that reason, United States is really, cranking up its operations to do regime change in Cambodia. They've been funneling funds to the opposition parties trying to unseat Sun, and in the most recent, this is why they're getting very upset. The Hun Sen is consolidating his power because basically the U.S. supported opposition party got sidelined. This is the real reason they're so upset.
Right. Okay. So, what the United States is saying is they will pause foreign assistance. And so, what you're saying is that Cambodia is used to that and already has sort of a backup buddy in China that may be stronger for
Yeah,
them. Okay.
yeah,
So, but the US and the EU and other Western countries didn't even send observers to this election. Russia and China
yes.
did. And so they're comfortable in saying it just didn't go the way we wanted, but we didn't see it for ourselves. And so, is it your observation living in the region that the Hun Sen party is actually popular enough to win a legitimate election?
Well, this is hard to say. I mean Bali, like Cambodia is a separate country. But as far as I know, Hun Sen has been ruling Cambodia since solely since '7. And it even goes even further because he was ruling when the Vietnamese army came in 1978. So he's been running a long stretch of time,
Right.
and through all this time, like starting from '90s, U.S. has been been trying to unseat Hun Sen for as far as I can remember. That didn't happen. So he has to have some degree of public support to
Yes.
stay for
Okay.
that long. That's what I think. Yeah.
Okay. That's as comfortable as either of us can get, not being voters in that region. So interesting. So now what the United States says it's going to do is pause visa restrictions and other foreign assistance and sort of drum up other partners to do it as well. So this maybe was expected then, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, well, I mean, like, I don't think that's even a lot of threat to Cambodia right now because they're just saying, oh, we're going to cut off the U.S. tourists and possibly pressure our European allies to cut off the visa so the European tourists will come. Well, the tourism from the West is already a small fraction compared to the Chinese tourists that are going into Cambodia. So in tourism business, China account much of the lion's share of the market. So I don't think this U.S. doesn't really have a lot of leverage in Cambodia right now. I mean, I think that's why they're kind of clutching at straws.
Right. Yeah. And then when we sort of put on a scale of like what elections we think are legitimate and what elections we don't, there's no rhyme or reason there. So we can take that with a grain of sand. So a grain of salt. Excuse me. I'm mixing my idioms. Well, thank you so much for this perspective. It was really helpful because a lot of this I did not know. So this is another reason to listen to Carl Zha's Silk and Steel podcast. You get a lot of this history that we just don't get in the West. And you can follow him on Twitter at Carl Zha. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Natalie, as always.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.